Have you ever had financial goals that were in competition with each other? You want to renovate the kitchen. Your spouse wants a new car. And a cold, hard look at the budget reveals that there's just not enough money for both of those goals to be achieved. So, a decision has to be made. The same thing happens with our time. We try to do too much with the limited amount of time that we have. I'll confess, I used to have a big problem with overcommitting. I like to help people, and I have skills to contribute. So I would often promise to do too many things. And because it's very, very important to me to keep my promises, I would end up sacrificing personal time and sometimes sleep to finish everything that I promised. But that is just not sustainable over the long term. Something had to change. And learning to budget my time just like my money radically changed my life. Now, before I begin a certain quarter, I set aside time to plan how I'm going to budget the time available and the projects that I want to accomplish in that quarter. Budgeting, along with the cold, hard facts and numbers, forces me to be realistic about what I can actually accomplish. And that means no more stress trying to finish several huge projects on time. No more disappointing people or breaking my promises. Another bonus is that it makes decision making so easy. For example, recently I was invited to serve on a committee and I wanted to do it. But I went to my time budget and I realized it was simply impossible unless I was willing to sacrifice time from something else that is really important to me. My time budget helped me make that decision. And the committee accepted my reason because they know everyone has a limited amount of time. Now, time budgeting is even more critical for people who juggle multiple roles. It's so important to have a system that works, that prevents you from overcommitting. And in previous videos, we've talked about how to budget your day and your week. In this video, I'm going to introduce 6 steps to making a time budget for the quarter. And in the following videos in this series, we'll look at each of those steps in more detail. The first step to making a quarterly time budget is to identify your working days. Now, it's important to reserve time for important projects. And the first decision is going to be whether you're going to use the traditional quarter that is used in businesses of 3 months. You might consider using a semester of 4 months. This can be really useful if you're involved in education, whether as a student or as a teacher or in some other role. Now, I like to use the 4-month option, and I just call those 4-month periods seasons. So I have 3 seasons a year. I have season 1, season 2, and season 3. Season 1 goes from January to April, season 2 from May to August, and season 3 from September to December. And I find that this works really well for me because I have more trips in that middle season and some other commitments that happen in the summer. So I find that season 1 and season 3 are my highest productivity times. And in the summer, I seem to have more trips. So this planning system works well for me, but you might choose to do 3-month quarters. Now, once you've decided on that, you need to make a list of the weeks in each of those periods and identify how many working days are available. So you do that by first writing in any trips or conferences or long meetings, and that is going to let you see how many full working days you have in each week of that quarter or semester or season. You can also highlight weeks where you have no commitments at all. No meetings, no trips, no conferences, because that can be a really great time to fully concentrate on a large project. So after you've identified how many working days you have in the quarter or season, next you need to decide on your working hours. That is step 2. In previous videos, we've talked about setting a limit of the number of hours you will work each day. Now, this is for your health your physical and mental health and the sake of your family and your personal time. 8 hours a day is typical, but it doesn't have to be that way. This depends on your lifestyle. And remember, whatever amount of hours you choose for a working day, not all of those hours will be available for projects. You have to reserve some time for administration, paperwork, trivia, unexpected things that come up, answering emails, phone calls, things like that. So keeping that in mind, you need to decide how many focused hours you can work each day on projects. So at one time, I was too optimistic and I tried to use 8 hours a day. Well, that was a disaster because it just didn't leave any time for the little things that have to be done. And so I would end up doing those in the evenings or weekends, and it just felt like I was working all the time. So I actually now use 6 hours a day. And now keep in mind, this is a day that has no other commitments, no long meetings, no trips, no conferences. It's a full working day, and I am trying to use 6 hours of that 8 hours I have set for my working day towards my projects. But it's not easy. I have to be very, very intentional and stay very focused and be careful not to give in to interruptions. So if you are new to time budgeting, I don't recommend that you use 6 hours a day. You might want to use maybe 4 or even less until you kind of get used to the system. So what you're going to do is enter the total amount of working hours for each week based on that. And then you can have an idea of how many hours you have for projects throughout the whole quarter or season. So step 1 was identify your working days. Step 2, identify how many working hours you'll have in each of those full days. So step 3 now is to plan your projects for the quarter or season. So you want to list any projects you need to accomplish and also the projects that you would like to accomplish. Now, I like to list my projects by role. I've divided my work into 3 main roles, and I like to kind of keep them fairly even. I want to give a similar amount of time to each of my 3 roles. So I like to list out my projects for the season under those roles so that I can kind of keep them balanced. So you might want to think about that. What percentage of your time do you want to spend on each of your roles? And we've talked more about this in previous videos, even about color coding them, red, green, and blue, or something like that. So it's easy to see at a glance which role you have things in and information in. So after you list your projects, you're going to need to estimate how long is needed for each of those projects. And you can do that based on past information that you've kept track of similar projects. If not, then you'll just have to try to think how much time you think it will need and leave some margin. So maybe add more than you think it will actually take, because that will keep you from overcommitting. So after you've estimated the time needed, you're going to need to make sure your projects are in order of priority. So when we talk about priority, that could be more than one thing. It could be how important it is. It could also be when the deadline is. So if you have, say, 5 projects and 2 of them are due the first month of the quarter or season and 2 are due in the last month, then that's going to help you put them in order of priority. So the 4th step for your quarterly time budget is to balance that time budget. What you'll do is add up the total hours for all of the projects that you listed, and if you're doing this by role, you can see if maybe you have it in the percentages you want it to be. That's kind of an optional thing. But the question you want to ask yourself is, those total project hours, do they add up to more than the hours I said I had available? Remember, the hours you said you had to use for projects, this was a realistic picture of focused time that you can give in a full workday. And so we're trying to be very realistic here. We don't want to overcommit and get stressed out. So if the total hours for your projects is more than the hours you said you had available, something has to give. Something has to maybe be deferred. And this is why you put your projects in order of priority. It will make it easier for you to decide what can be deferred. So it's important when you're doing this quarterly time budget not to fill your schedule with projects that must be completed, projects that have firm deadlines. You need to include some that are a little more flexible, that you can defer to the next quarter or season if you have to. Why? Because often projects take longer than we expected. Our estimate is off, and usually it means we underestimated. Sometimes we might overestimate, but that's fine. That just means you have some free time. But when we underestimate, that can cause stress. So it's important that we don't only list projects that absolutely have to be done in that quarter, because we're going to run into a problem if we do that. Sometimes you have new projects that come up along the way and they're not even on your list yet. So you just have to make sure you're leaving some margin. The fifth step to your quarterly time budget is pretty easy. It's just to follow it. So just like we tell money where to go in a financial budget, we tell our time where it's going to go. So each day you decide what you're going to work on based on those priorities in your quarterly time budget. And an idea that I've found helpful is if there's a project that I tend to put off and procrastinate, sometimes I'll make myself work on that on Mondays. And that way I get it out of the way and I don't have to think about it the rest of the week. Another option might be to use the first 2 hours of the day for projects that tend to get pushed aside by more urgent things. So something you know is important, maybe it's not screaming urgently like some others, but you know you really need to give it steady time. You might want to use the first part of the day for that. And then finally, the sixth step for your quarterly time budget is to monitor it. Just like finances, if you don't monitor your time, it just tends to slip away. So each day, make sure that you accomplish the number of hours you planned. And as long as it was for something on your approved project list, you won't run out of time at the end of the quarter. That means you could change the order of the projects if you need to. So say one day you just don't feel motivated to work on the next project on your list, choose something else, but make sure it's something from the list. And that way your time budget is going to balance. So each week you can monitor your progress on your projects and make adjustments to your quarterly time budget as you need. So we've looked at 6 steps to making a quarterly time budget. Number 1, identify your working days. Number 2, decide on your working hours. Number 3, plan your projects. Number 4, balance your time budget. Number 5, follow your time budget. And number 6, monitor your time budget. So I have a question for you. What is the main project that you want to accomplish in the next quarter? Feel free to comment below. What is the main project you want to accomplish in the next quarter? Be sure to get your free quarterly time budget worksheet by clicking the link below in the comments. And stay tuned for more videos in this series about quarterly time budgeting.